get all that graffiti removed this past summer. So basically, as we were kind of talking about it, and Ashley Bright, the director of the Boys and Girls Club, he wants it to look awesome. We want it to look awesome. We want to see families in there enjoying it and the kids having a good time. It's the only facility of that nature that we have in the city. So we want it to look good, and so, you know, they've agreed to help us kind of be stewards of that property and help us keep an eye on it. But other than that, that's pretty much it.
Right. Tim, just a shot in the dark, would it be advantageous for security cameras at all in that area?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, that is an excellent suggestion, to the point where we've talked about even setting up temporary stuff in the building so it would point down there so we could you know, capture that on video. But more what we've been doing now is we've been upgrading the lighting, so I think what you're going to see is us put the cameras on the light poles themselves. I think that is a wise move.
Okay, good.
With some signage that the cameras are there.
Absolutely.
Okay, any questions, concerns about us taking this on? Seems like the right thing to do. So it'll basically be like one of our parks in a way, facility that we operate.
And Mr. Mayor, what you'll see coming from us 2 weeks from now will be as an amendment, which will be amendment number 4 to that lease. Being a 25-year lease, there'll be many years of amendments probably coming, but this is just to extract that piece of property out of their lease.
Any other questions? We'll just move on. Sounds good. Context sensitive amenities, first group.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you received a packet over the weekend that is the formal request, if you will, to amend the cooperative agreement that we have with YDOT that indicates what changes and amenities we would like to add to the project, understanding that you know, there would be a cost to us for some of that. This letter is the first step in amending that agreement. That agreement will then come back in its amended form for council to approve on a formal basis, and then we should be off and running. So we just wanted to make sure that the letter was reflective of your direction and we didn't miss anything or anything you wanted to add or subtract, basically.
Comments? Concerns? What I remember. Steve?
I guess I still have an issue with 10 foot on both sides. I think that's an awful lot of money for 5 foot of walkway.
You survived?
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah. They told me the wrong time and the wrong place to be. I never make mistakes.
Point taken. I think we had our 5+ thumbs, so.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But you asked.
Yeah, I did. I did. Probably not the only one thinking that. Any comments on? Okay, let's move forward with that.
Perfect. Will do.
The Nicolation request, well, why don't you run through it? I'm familiar with it, but let's make sure council understands.
Yes, sir. You bet. The Nicolation is a facility that we own that is operated by the Nicolation Art Museum, as you all know. And a part of their 1% request to the council was with regard to making some repairs to the building that would prevent the building from leaking. And that's primarily around those window structures that are shaped funny and have never really sealed all that well. And so the basic request is to determine whether or not council would have the tolerance for allowing for the cost of that project to be front-loaded with regard to the 4-year commitment that the council has made, so they can go ahead and move forward with those improvements and get those things fixed, and hopefully not have to deal with leaking window panes any further. The amount of which is, do you remember, Fleur? I can't recall. Okay.
It was like 52, 57.
So we're getting $25,000 per quarter, and what they asked for was advance of the next 2 quarters so they could get it all done at once
Gotcha.
before winter comes in and they have potentially some more damage to the leakage.
Thank you.
So it's not anything extra?
It's not extra money, it's really just giving them the money prior to when they were scheduled to get it.
And we can do that?
Okay. As long as you guys are comfortable with it.
Because we're a little bit ahead of schedule with our receipts, so we do have it. Just, well, it's, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge amount, so.
By actually giving them all of the money so they can get it all done at once, shouldn't that actually lower their cost for the project? Rather than having to do it in phases with several demob of contractors and everything?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I think that's quite possible. I think that's quite possible.
And more importantly, it's you spend money to fix things, and water causes damage, so.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any concerns about giving them the okay to advance that money? Okay. Guess we're all good, I'm seeing a lot of heads nod.
Pay me now or pay me later.
Yeah.
It's the same amount of money and, okay. Alright, simple enough. Anything on tonight's agenda?
I think maybe when we get to setting the public hearing for the Plains building, that we make it clear that it's just setting the public hearing, it's not the actual public hearing. As Councilwoman Woods pointed out, that there was a news article that a lot of people are upset about. So they might be coming out today thinking that we are voting on it today. It's a little ways through.
Yeah, it should be.
No, I just had it.
Item
Oh, sorry,
B
12
will be-
B2.
Here it is, okay. And just because we had an oversight in the announcement. Okay. Bob?
Yeah, I do have some concerns regarding our agreement, regarding the 5-year parking lot agreement. I'm just concerned about doing that, quite honestly. I think there's some issues that, if we're giving them a 5-year option, as I recall, from the agreement, there are other entities down there that probably do have some legitimate want for that parking lot. So I'm just concerned about having that in the agreement, and I guess I'd like to see that go away, the option. So I don't know how other folks feel about it, but.
Something to say about that, don't you?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Hopkins, I agree. I think that's a reasonable point that some constituents have brought up, and frankly, it would be very, very difficult for me to do 2 things. One, recommend that it ever be sold, first of all, because I think it ought to be a public parking asset available to the public for as long as we can do that. And secondly, I don't think it's fair to the public process, if indeed council were to ever dispose of a property, to allow for one bidder, so to speak, to have that chance and nobody else. And so I couldn't agree more with the idea. And so my proposal will be to guarantee and commit that the property will not be sold for a period of no less than 10 years from the date of the signing of the purchase agreement to anybody.
I could live with that, yeah. Yep.
And is that a change that will be in the document in the packet for the 15th, or is that a change we have to make on the 15th?
Mr. Mayor, that will be an element of the purchase agreement that will come forward to you. So you shouldn't have to make any change unless, of course, you just want to change some language in the agreement at any point.
So it will be fixed before we roll.
Yes, sir.
Steve?
I was concerned about the waiving of the tipping fees. Because that's, we're already, if we follow through with this, we're already selling a 1.2 mil property for less than half that. And then there's a fairly significant amount of tipping fee that we're throwing on top of that. And we shouldn't totally be subsidizing. I know we are wanting housing downtown, but that's an awful sweet deal. And I think the landfill could use the tipping fees.
It was a negotiated deal, but respond to that and
Mr. Mayor,
It's fine.
no problem. Councilman Kathy, I can appreciate that perspective because I don't like to waive fees, and I don't think it does the enterprises good to have a common practice or something like that. In this scenario, where we are only dealing with the strict C and D type debris, not hazardous type debris, we are probably going to waive, if you will, some $6,000 or $7,000 worth of tipping fees. And so for me, it didn't seem like a huge issue. And so I feel like I can recommend that as a concession, mostly because the fee just isn't that big.
and there were a lot of asks that we denied.
Yes, sir.
Quite a few. So, Mike?
Okay, well, I was concerned about the same thing Councilman Kathy was, but by you telling me to sit, stay, wait, and roll over, my question was already answered. I was curious how much it was gonna be, so.
And they were the only bidders. Okay, so we'll just, and we made a public comment anyway, in the general public comment period about this, if people were concerned about
Mr.
it.
Mayor, I'm wondering if it would be maybe a good idea to put in there, the dump fees up to a certain amount. So that then if all of a sudden it's ballooned into a big, huge amount, if it's $6,000 or $7,000, maybe even $10,000, that's one thing. If all of a sudden it becomes 20, 30, 50, 100,
Do you see any downside to that? I think that's reasonable, isn't it?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, that doesn't necessarily bother me. We can work with the developers and see if we can include that language, if that's the will of the council.
10,000?
I would have to go along with that, because I think that was one of the things, and I know that I haven't got all the emails or the Facebooks, but a couple of the things that I have been asked for, well, you're waiving all of these tipping fees, and they're gonna be, I think people are thinking they're $10,000, $20,000. If they're only 6 or 7, then that's something that needs to be brought up, and I love Mike's side, Councilman Huber's idea that, yeah, let's set a limit on it. That way public knows, everybody knows what we're actually waiving and go from there. Because, yeah, I think there's a lot of concrete in that livery stable.
I wonder if you could just have a discussion with them and arrive at a figure and maybe recommend that next week.
No problem.
Would that be okay with everyone? So we can agree on a number. Anything else on tonight's agenda?
Just so you know, I will be making an amendment when it comes to amendments on the trees and shrubs ordinance.
And that's the one you discussed about the demolition?
And actually, Mr. Henley had one that he wanted to change as well, so I will be introducing that as well for him.
Okay. Everybody's good, we'll just take a little break and start at 6.
Mr. Mayor, can I bring up one item if you don't mind? There is a change order in your agenda tonight, and just so you're comfortable and understand what's going on, I asked Andrew if he wouldn't mind, if it pleases the council, to hear about that a little bit.
Your Honor, Counsel, the change order you see in front of you is for the 2019 residential street repair project. It was about a $550,000 contract, and what you really see in front of you is a reconciliation of the final quantities. We had overruns on our leveling course on 53rd Street. There was no crown, and we like to typically see a 2% crown on the roadway. No doubt that's why that roadway it fell in an accelerated manner beforehand. And then after we milled eastward, there was substantial soft spots down there that we had to do a full depth patch on. So those are the two major overruns. Is why you see a change order amount of $45,000 for that contract. But it really is a reconciliation of what work was actually done out in the field. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Why do we find out about, now, the reconciliation on materials used, I understand, project needs to be finished, but by the same token, this was all, particularly the time extension, would have been done back the end of July. And my question, I guess, is, did you bring that, or was that brought to council at that time? Because we're being asked now for a time extension from August something to August 9th, which we're already a month past the time extension. And I guess that always bothers me when we're being asked to approve something that's already happened.
Your Honor, Counsel, and that is a valid point. I mean, on cases like this, though, when we've got a contract out in the field and we know we have to fix it, we generally give the go-ahead to go ahead and do it. We generally look at what was approved by council at the contingency amount, and we feel somewhat comfortable going up that level amount if it's something that we could not have foreseen necessarily. And the reason it's coming so late to you is there was some going back and forth with the contractors about what was actually physically installed in the field. And some, let's just say, some negotiations.
Okay.
If that helps.
What it should have cost to actually do it.
Well, and what they actually put down in the field.
They said they put down this much asphalt. They said they put down this much asphalt. So we
And it was all within the contingency.
Correct.
Okay. It was just the time frame. Yeah.
And I can appreciate that.
Any other questions for Andrew on the change order? Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Wish us luck. We're heading to DC tomorrow morning.
And this is scheduled for 5:37 in the glazing and
If we can get Midwest Avenue finished.
the time is supposed to be.
If it's done in time, yes, I'll show you where it's going. Be there.
Okay, do that beach fish.
We'll go with the
Right.
Okay. I now call the September 17, 2019 regular council meeting to order. Would council members please denote your presence by depressing your yes switch?
All council members are present.
Just a reminder that council meetings are televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. As is my custom, could I get a volunteer to come to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Someone care to lead us this evening? Got a volunteer? Good evening, and could we get your name, please?
Good evening, Pastor Kerry Williams.
Thank you, Pastor. Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the September 3rd, 2019 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on September 10th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Hopkins, I think. Any amendments to those minutes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the September 3rd, 2019 executive session.
So, second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Johnson, seconded by Councilwoman Lutz. Any amendments to those minutes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the September 10, 2019 special council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on September 15, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Friel, seconded by Councilman Bates. Any amendments to those minutes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the September 10, 2019 executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Cathey, seconded by Councilman Bates. Any amendments to those minutes? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With the abstentions from Councilman Johnson and Hopkins noted, the motion passes.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the September 17, 2019 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by, I didn't catch that.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Pacheco. Any abstentions to the bills and claims? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay. We are pleased to welcome members of the Olivia Caldwell Foundation here tonight. And this group has asked for a proclamation acknowledging Childhood Cancer Awareness Month of 2019. Would members please come to the podium and introduce yourselves?
Thank you for having us. I am Katie Caldwell-Burchett, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Olivia Caldwell Foundation.
Good evening.
I'm Lisa Bauman-Brown, board member.
Thank you.
I'm Summer Moline, development coordinator.
Ashley Vondra, board member.
Matthew Snyder, board member.
Dama Quick, board member.
Brian Reitner, board member.
Thank you all for coming. Would you like to share any information about the foundation and its activities?
So we have a foundation we've been around since November 2013. I founded the foundation just 3 weeks after my daughter Olivia passed away from brain cancer when she was 20 months old. Since that time, we have given $325,000 to pediatric cancer research, and in the coming days, we're going to be announcing a project with some local partners and partners out of Colorado that will directly benefit Wyoming children. So we're just really excited to be able to continue our work to help children who are fighting cancer and those who are fighting other complicated medical conditions.
Okay, that's a coordinated project with the medical center, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and with Children's Hospital Colorado and CU School of Medicine.
And hopefully folks won't have to travel as much to get care.
Yes.
And stay in a foreign town when they're already struggling.
Yeah, we're incredibly excited. We'll be putting out a joint press release on Thursday to announce all the details.
Maybe foreign wasn't fair to Denver, but it's sort of foreign. Well, if you guys would like to come up here, let's do the proclamation. And if you'll all just step up to behind me. Front here. Whereas pediatric cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in United States children under 15 years of age. 1 out of 5 children diagnosed with cancer will not survive the disease. And whereas cancer kills more children than AIDS, asthma, cystic fibrosis, diabetes, and muscular dystrophy combined. And whereas childhood cancer rates have been rising for the past few decades, and the incidence of invasive pediatric cancers is up to 29% in the past 20 years, while the funding for pediatric cancer research has gone down steadily since 2003. And whereas 2/3 of childhood cancer patients will develop long-lasting chronic conditions as a result of treatment that prevent them from fully participating in school, social activities, and work. And whereas, despite major advances in treatment, it is still critically important to conduct research and increase awareness regarding pediatric cancer. And whereas September is observed as National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Now therefore, I, Charles Powell, Mayor of the City of Casper, Wyoming, do hereby proclaim September 2019 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in this community and encourage all of our citizens to help raise awareness of pediatric cancer and its victims. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the City of Casper, Wyoming to be affixed this 17th day of September 2019. Signed, Charlie Powell, Mayor of Casper. Here we go.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
I'm pleased to introduce our Community Development Director, Liz Becker, who will be telling us about the upcoming census. Ms. Becker.
Members of council, the City of Casper staff and the Community Development Department has been working for over a year to get prepped for the 2020 census, which officially kicks off March 12th, 2020. I have put a packet of materials at each of your place settings tonight, and our role as the city was to put together what's called a complete count committee. And the complete count committee for Casper is one that is going to help ascertain who needs really to have outreach directed towards them. And it's a committee made up of business and community leaders that will definitely use the data that the census provides. I know the City of Casper, we use the census data all the time with grants. We use it for actually helping sell the community with statistics about Casper. But we had created, as a result of this complete count committee, a mascot. And Buzz is our mascot with the theme of Be Counted. And so we put a lot of work into this a year ago, came up with, we thought, a pretty darn creative character, and one that is well received in the community. Buzz debuted in the summer parade, so while you all were on that fire truck with the big hoses, we were debuting Buzz and passing out what? Bit of honey candies. And the community really rallied around us, and it didn't get stuck to the streets either. But Buzz has been out to the farmers markets. We are passing out little honey sticks where we go. We've got census bags. And then what I had put on your packets is a sticker that we will be out into the schools. We're working obviously closely with the school district with stickers for the children to be counted. Again, all of this will be done online, but at the same point in time, not everyone has capability to do their surveys or their census online, so there's a lot of education which goes into this, utilizing some of the pads that are out there as well as the library. You only give him one. He's not worth. So again, with the particular list that I gave you, I wanted you all to see who the community members are. We have had a lot of volunteers agree to wear the Buzz costume. And most importantly, I think for this council, is we've had a lot of teenagers help us out, whether it was up at Bear Trap or, as I said, in the parade. And what I'd like to do as we get closer to March is to bring those young people here in front of you and do some proclamations to them, only because these are our young people and they're out volunteering with the 2020 census. They are having the face of our future generations. It goes hand in hand with so many of our community development goals. And if any of your children would like to help participate, again, it's getting out at the events, the farmers markets, the art walks. We'll be at the expo for the Women's Expo. I mean, it's just getting out there and making the census less scary and more friendly, and I think that's what that big bumblebee is doing behind me right now. The second page of this handout does give you some frequently asked questions that I think all of you would like to be aware of, as far as more of the dates and how to access census information. But our summer intern, Caitlin Scavdahl, who worked in our department for 3 months and will continue with us long distance from Laramie as a student, took the extra initiative and translated all of this on the back sheet into Spanish for us, because she's got a Spanish minor, and we decided we need to be out there and being friendly in this community and being able to reach everyone. So just thought this was kind of a handy dandy piece of information you all would like to know, and again, to see what we are doing through your city staff to get the word out about the census and to be able to utilize that data in everything we do going forward. There is compensation for the number of citizens that we have signed up in the city of Casper, so we are, again, aggressively going after that to get our federal fair share. So be happy to entertain any questions. And no, you can't know who's in the costume tonight. It's a secret. Only the bee's knees know.
Questions for Liz? What would you all think about bringing Buzz up here and getting a picture with council?
Ooh, and putting it on our Facebook page, which we set up, and our Twitter and all of that fun stuff.
Make it up there.
appropriate if it's just with the mayor, I think.
Much better than
You want your picture with Buzz?
With the mayor, just be respectful of the mayor, not the mayor.
It's kind of hard to get my arm around your wings here. There we go. Push his hand.
Oh, very nice. Okay, let's see. You can do buzz, buzz, make sure your mouth looks nice and smiley. 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah. City of Casper. Pretty impressive group.
Thank you. There's a lot of people in town that have always wanted to do that.
Yes, and you can get away with it in a costume. So. Thank you all.
Well, it's just a really big deal, and what happens with this census is going to affect people sitting in these seats for many, many years as far as the options that'll be available to them, and we just need to get an accurate count. Now is the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. And as stated on the first page of the agenda, we ask you to please state your name and address to direct your questions to me. Please no personal attacks on council or staff. And if people have concerns about personnel matters, those will be referred to the manager. And please keep your remarks limited to 5 minutes. Who would like to come and address council this evening? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Pastor Kerry Williams. My address is 2-3 North Parkway Street, Casper, Wyoming. I'm grateful to be here tonight. I spoke with the mayor on the other day about coming and greeting you today. I am very new to this area. Looking forward to working on behalf of you. I think you're doing a wonderful job as city council and as the mayor.
But you haven't been here very long, so.
I've been here, baby.
I'm just joking with you. But
So I'm looking forward to meeting all of you guys and working on the side of you as a minister in this community. Keep up the good work, and may God bless you.
welcome to Casper. Who else would like to speak to council this evening? Good evening, sir.
My name is Dean Wood. I live at 3023 Pheasant Drive. And that's a hard act to follow, but I'll see what I can do here. I just want to kind of bring up maybe a little bit of support for an undeveloped portion of the park behind my house at Meadowlark Hill Subdivision. We've had a couple of meetings. Mr. Bates has been there. I forget your last name, but Mr. Tim here, and Liz has been there. And a lot of discussion has taken place about this place, this undeveloped park. And, you know, we moved in '96, and we were told then it was going to be developed, and there was money in escrow, and lots of residents have been told similar things, I suppose, over the years. And not to be mean, but there's a couple residences that moved in there in the mid-'70s that have since actually passed away, waiting on something to occur there. And our kids have kind of grown up and they've moved away. There's a new generation in there now. And lots of ideas have been kicked around, from a community garden to grassing it, a beautiful walk area, any number of things. And I do understand that if we're not down here being squeaky, it's never going to happen. And so I don't know where it goes from here. I'm just trying to encourage someone to take this up and maybe champion it and do something with it, whether it's just running water back there so it's not yellow, maybe it's green, and plant a few trees, or I don't know, let us do something with it. I don't know what the answer or the solution is, but I'm just looking for some assistance, you know. I really felt I'd have a little bit more support here tonight, but I don't know that we really had a game plan or an agenda either, just some loose ideas.
Was there another follow-up meeting scheduled, Mr. Wood?
That was last night. You know, and
Realize it
not
was
to
last
pick on
night.
anybody, but we were going to have a couple representatives there from our ward, you know, and it was basically Tim
My apologies, I should have been there.
and the residents, and actually the turnouts have been nice, they really have. Everybody wants to see something occur with it. It's been a long time, because of the condition it's in, it does attract skunks and field mice, and we're not always gonna be able to amend that, but I don't know, it'd be nice for something to occur. I know we have I think we're 3 acres there. It's 5 acres that is actually grassed a little bit north of us. But it's in a shape and in a place that, unless you're a miniature football team, I don't know what you would do with it. You know, it'd be an awesome place for a tennis court. Just something that the current generation or mindset would allow, like a walking path or a tennis court or a community garden. I did walk around there and got some signatures just to see how that would go, and it's surprising how many parents thought their kids would love that. At my age, raised would be preferable than on the ground, but we're open to anything other than a straw field that's just dry. You can't really, our kids grew up back there riding 4-wheelers and bicycles, and they can't do anything like that anymore. I'm just looking for something to maybe try and champion this thing and see if we can do something, you know.
Was there any consensus last night or any plan that people came up with, or is there another meeting scheduled, or?
Not necessarily right now. This is kind of it, and this is all my support, I guess. The consensus, I think, for the most part, and Tim could correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm married, I'm wrong a lot, is a perimeter road for maintenance to our homes and accessibility, which has always been there. Water / grass, even less than that, maybe mowing it more often, so it's not necessarily a fire hazard, because it's yellow right now. It's not that it's gonna burn, but if it ever caught fire, it would go up right now. I mean, everyone's really in lieu of, or would be happy with some pretty simple items. Grass and sprinklers would be awesome. If we could build and move out there raised garden beds, I think people would be impressed. It's just, you know, I don't know anyone's gonna put their foot down if we self-improve as we go. I can't imagine anyone's gonna police it in that regard, but it'd be nice if someone would say, we're not gonna stop you. You know, I've had an extra tree or two given to me, and I've actually placed them out there. And the agreement kind of was, as long as you don't mow them down, I will water them. And it's working, and they're taking, and it just, there's nothing there but the trees I planted. You know, and I've been very selfish about it. They are in the proximity of my yard.
Okay. I am going to have to stop and ask if we have questions, Mr. Wood. But
Sure.
Any questions for Mr. Wood? Mr. Cortez, you've already committed to mowing more frequently, is that correct? So, but we're still without anything else definitive at this point. Okay.
And there's a myriad of families that surround the park, so the ideas are varied, but I think obviously mowing more often is going to be helpful. And if someone, potentially if we could get water and just seed it, you know, just anything, so we're not looking at, and obviously everyone I think did speak up, they really would not want to see any of it sold to fund developing it, you know, any lots where you could build a home in there. But, you know, obviously I understand you can't give me a solution tonight, but it's been since mid-70s and here we are. You know, it'd be nice if we could do something with it.
Okay.
Not a new development, but it.
Well, I'm not sure what the next step would be, but we're kind of at a standstill. Is that correct, Mr. Cortez? Or,
I would just say without the budgetary impact.
okay.
Without budgetary.
Okay. So, Councilman Bates?
I do want you to know that at one of our work sessions, we did bring this up and discuss it and shot ideas around. And So it has been on our agenda, it has been on our mind. So I didn't want you thinking it just fell to the wayside, especially after you and I talked. I know you've talked to Tim, but we did have it on a work session, so yeah.
I don't think it's fallen by the wayside. I think it's always been there. You know, I'm just looking for someone to kind of go. You know, just another thought, mostly because I don't tend to give up easily. If somehow we could get water under the road from the existing park to the undeveloped, that alone, people would be willing to put a tree in. They would grass area. You know, it might be kind of patchwork situation, but I think it would take off, and that did excite some people.
Well, let's do this. I'm going to just suggest that we put this on keep this on our work session list of topics, and maybe have a meeting in the spring, and the three of us, Ward 2 reps, need to be there. And again, my apologies. And then we can start this discussion again. And of course, the challenge is trying to come up with some kind of a consensus within the neighborhood. But maybe we can start that process in the spring and see where we are with our budget, and whether council would want to, if we have any unallocated money, whether council would want to invest in that property. So I don't want to tease you that, you know, we're going to be able to do something, but obviously it's been sitting there for a long, long time. So let's just put that on the list, Mr. City Manager, and we'll just defer it until then, since we don't have anything concrete and we don't have any money set aside. So we'll just have to leave it there, Mr. Wood, I think. Unless people have other questions. Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, my name's Veronica White, and my dad was George Corrales, and he was killed by a tree last June of 2018. And what I would like to say is the first thing that came out of my mouth when my sister told me he had been hit by a tree was, why in the heck was he even out there in the first place? Because no arborist is going to let anybody out there. So my dad ended up in the hospital with a broken femur, and when we left the hospital, we took his stuff with us, and I thought that maybe he would need his shoes. I want just to put a body, or since we don't have a body, I want to put a person with this name, because it's easy to say that this was just an old man. He was a father, a grandfather, an uncle. He was a great-grandfather. He was a brother. This may seem like an isolated incident, but I believe that if it happens once, it can happen again. And that is my concern. I don't want to see this to happen to anybody else in this community. I think that if you guys don't pass this, I think that in the future something is going to happen, and you're going to be sorry you didn't pass it. I don't want to see anybody else bury somebody in their family like this. It's taken our whole family at least this year just to wrap our minds around how this tree could fall and hit my dad, and how I'm shocked he survived, just at least long enough for us to say goodbye. I do want to thank the Casper Fire Department and the surgical center up at the hospital, or the surgical floor. Those gals are great. But those firemen, it took 7 people just to get that tree off of him. Plus, it took neighbors to lift that tree off of him. To this day, it is so difficult to even think about what he went through, because my dad was so strong. I just want you guys to think about this when you're voting on it. This was not just a person that came in off the street. My dad lived in this town his whole life. He was born here. He had his kids here. He was a tax-paying citizen. He worked for Wyoming Machinery for 27 years. He was one of the most respected diesel mechanics that worked for Wyoming Machinery. All four of us have been part of this community. I have a brother who's a physician. I have a brother who's a minister. My sister used to work at Safeway. I'm right now, I've been a mother, and right now I'm semi-retired. We've all been part of this community. And I just hope you think about it, that this man was such a part of this community. He was also part of the library board. He died when he was 89, and he would go Monday through Friday to work out at the rec center. The coroner said if he would have not been hit by that tree, he would have lived another 10 years. That's 10 more years. And sad to say, the week that he got hit was the week before my daughter's wedding. So he did not get to see his granddaughter get married. So yes, this all connects to this community. And I think that we really need to watch the people in this community and protect them. And if that means passing a law, yes, it means passing a law.
Thank you. Is it Ms. White? Is that correct?
What's that?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name. It's
White.
Ms. White. Any questions for Ms. White? And we're sorry for your loss. We know it's been a horrible thing for your family. We saw the photos when your siblings, I believe, were here, and it was a horrible event.
Thank you.
Is anyone else here to speak with council this evening? Good evening.
Evening. Dennis Steensland, 533 South Washington. You never know where to get in the lineup for speaking with council. But anyway, I'm back here again this week, and I'll be here every council meeting until the Plains furniture is sold. Since then, I've met with city staff, got accurate numbers. It looks to me like it's every bit of $1.5 million and probably more that you're thinking about just putting under the rug and selling that property for $500,000. It's got so many issues in it that it's even hard to imagine you're considering it for that kind of money, even though I've read the stuff that leads you to want to get this thing moving. My old thing is the amount of money that they're trying to buy the thing for and the ramifications on it. To me, it's not fair to Ashby. It's not fair to K-Larks, John Huff. It's not fair to the city people. Next time they put out an RFP, they just outweight the council, and next thing you know, you give away a valuable piece of property. I would like to see it developed just like Flag has on the agenda, but you just did budget. I know you didn't have $1,500,000 to just throw around. This gentleman's park could be built with that kind of money. There's just so many things that could be done with that money that I don't understand why you're even considering it. I had a lot of other thoughts on this thing. I know it got put off for another month. I'm just hoping you'll all consider it a little more in depth. My information comes from the city, and I was around when most of this stuff went on. Anyway, the first proposal says $1 million. Now we're down to $500,000. Before, when they first when they wanted to build a conference center there, that was the most valuable piece of property in town. Both gentlemen involved with Flag made that comment and fought for it at that time. I don't know how many of you remember that, but it was very, very evident that they were in favor of that piece of ground. To their benefit, they followed it all the way through. Business plan, if you can afford to give away that much of my taxpayer money and this gentleman's taxpayer money, it just doesn't make any sense that you would even consider that. So I'll keep coming up here, and I do have some information. I understand there's going to be another proposal from Flag that'll have some different information in it, I assume. A lot of this information is old. So I don't know what you go by. If you read all this and put your thoughts together, or if you wait for December 13th, or not, October 13th. So anyway, between now and then, I'm hoping to influence enough of the council, because you've got the final say. I don't know where the other people that pay the taxes are. I haven't tried to approach anybody, but I would expect some of them to be down here as well. Anyway, my 5 minutes is up, isn't up, but that's the only reason I'm down here. I've forgotten all my other words of wisdom that I have fretted over for the last week.
Questions for Mr. Steensland? Okay, well, I guess we'll see you on this topic again.
I bet we will.
Okay. Is anyone else here to speak to council? Okay. At the August 6, 2019 council meeting, 2 items were tabled. Please read these items by title only.
An ordinance amending Article 1 Parades, Section 10.72.010 to 10.72.140, and a resolution rescinding Resolution Number 18-259 and adopting a revised special event guide and policy and application and fees for special events.
Chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, remove from the table the items just read for consideration at the October 1, 2019 council meeting.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Kathy, seconded by Councilwoman Lutz. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. We will discuss those on October 1st. Oh, please record the vote, excuse me.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Sorry, we have a vice mayor. Please read the consent agenda titles.
Establish October 1st, 2019 as the public hearing date for consideration of a resolution rescinding Resolution Number 17-207 and adopting revised Historic Preservation Program rules and regulations, and Parade Ordinance Number 24-19, and first reading of that ordinance.
Chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Vice Mayor Johnson, seconded by Councilman Friel. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the city-initiated annexation of the Green Valley Mobile Home Park. Mr. City Attorney, do you have exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. We have 4 exhibits tonight. Exhibit 1, correspondence from Liz Becker to J. Carter Napier, dated September 6, 2019. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated July 29, 2019. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated August 2, 2019. And exhibit number 4, Green Valley Mobile Addition Annexation Report, dated July 2019.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight's action will effectively be a 2-part action process, if you will. The first action that we're asking for your consideration this evening would be a resolution that accepts the annexation report that has been completed and in our estimation meets the statutory obligations of what this report should cover. As we discussed in the work session, this report covers some of the basic questions with regard to the availability of services and with regard to the commitments that the city would make or not make, as it were, pursuant to potential annexation. The second part of the discussion this evening is with regard to a third reading of an ordinance surrounding the idea of annexing the subject area, as you see here on our exhibit, with regard to bringing this area into the limits of the city. Pursuant to that discussion this evening, once the third reading is heard and potentially approved, then the Green Valley Mobile Home Park would then become a part of the limits of the city of Casper.
And just as a reminder, that this area is essentially surrounded by the city, is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this area is surrounded on all four sides by the limits of the city. And so the test for contiguity is met, as well as with regard to city-initiated annexation pertaining to being more than or equal to 75% of that particular subject area being consumed by the limits of the city.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. And again, just as a reminder, public comments are limited to 5 minutes, and please no duplication of speakers. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving the annexation to please approach the lectern. Is anyone here to speak in favor of this annexation? There being no one to speak in favor, I would now ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues involving the annexation to please approach the lectern. Is anyone here to speak in opposition to the annexation? There being no one to speak for or against the annexation, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution finding facts pursuant to Wyoming Statute 15-1-402 regarding the annexation of the Green Valley Mobile Home Park located at 2760 South Robertson Road, comprising 14 acres more or less.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the resolution just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Bates. Discussion. And for those who are wondering, the motivation for this, we are looking at the census, the 2020 census, and these areas make sense to be part of the city as we head into that census period. We receive sales tax dollars on a per capita basis, and the larger the city of Casper is by population, the more sales tax revenue we receive. By my calculation, the total annexation amounts that we're looking at would easily pay for a police officer in a car, and that would be helpful to us. So, any other discussion, amendments? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay, please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving the city-initiated annexation of the Green Valley Mobile Home Park comprising 14 acres more or less located at 2760 South Robertson Road.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Any discussion on this matter? Amendments? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the issuance of restaurant liquor license number 41. Mr. City Attorney, do you have exhibits?
Yeah, 5 exhibits, Mayor. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Fleur Trummel, to J. Carter Napier dated August 8, 2019. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication is published in the Casper Star Tribune dated September 9, 2019. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of website publication is published on the City of Casper website dated September 4, 2019. Exhibit number 4, affidavit of notice of conspicuous posting pursuant to Wyoming Statute 12-4-104A is posted at 2333 East Yellowstone Highway dated September 4, 2019. And exhibit number 5, liquor license application filed August 7, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the address repeated to you by the city attorney is actually the address that most of you are probably familiar with as it relates to the former business, that being known as the Western Grill Restaurant. New proprietors have come into this property and plan to open the business known as El Burro Loco. And pursuant to that business effort, they would like to have a restaurant liquor license assigned to this address. My understanding is that a liquor license of any type has not been assigned to this address in previous years. Nonetheless, we certainly would recommend your favorable approval of this request.
Okay, thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are again limited to 5 minutes. Is anyone here to speak in favor of the issuance of restaurant liquor license number 41? If so, please approach the lectern. It's okay. Come on up. Good evening.
Marcela Marino. I'm the owner of El Burro Loco. We would like this license so we could serve just beer, and serve Casper, Wyoming.
Okay, thank you.
Mexican restaurant.
Okay, questions for Ms. Marino? Councilman Bates.
I haven't heard yet when you're officially opening. When is that?
Friday at 5
This Friday at 5
p.m.
I will be there.
Can't wait.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Huber.
just one question, ma'am. Are you going to have really good Mexican?
Of course, authentic, fresh tortillas and burritos and tacos, name it, we have it.
Great.
Do you have a specialty dish of some type you'd like to tell us about?
I would say it's the tacos.
Okay.
Tacos.
Okay. Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if you remember the last owner, if you ever met the last owner, but when he had the Western Grill,
I did not.
he had a famous saying, it was on the radio a lot, order what you want, eat what you get.
I remember that. So
I think we'll continue that.
we wish you the best.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay. Is anyone else here to speak in favor of the issuance of this liquor license? Is anyone here to speak in opposition to the issuance of the restaurant liquor license number 41? If so, please approach the lectern. There being no one else to speak for or against the issuance of restaurant liquor license number 41, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the issuance of restaurant liquor license number 41.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Friel. Any discussion? Amendments? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
On the agenda is a public hearing for the consideration of the sale and transfer of ownership of the former Plains Furniture property. However, staff is requesting that the hearing be canceled and the date reestablished. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, cancel and reestablish the public hearing date for October 15th, 2019.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Councilman Huber, seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With Councilman Friel's abstention noted, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Council will now discuss the ordinance for the creation of the Johnny J's addition. This item will be open for public comment and for discussion by council. Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance approving a vacation replat subdivision agreement and zone change creating the Johnny J's Addition subdivision in the city of Casper, Wyoming.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read. Anyone going to move? Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Cathy. Council will now listen to public comment. And again, public comments are limited to 5 minutes. Is anyone here to speak on the creation of the Johnny J's edition? Any discussion amongst council? Amendments? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Council will now discuss the ordinance amending the municipal code pertaining to trees and shrubs. This item will also be open for public comment and for discussion by council. Please read the ordinance on first reading by title only.
An ordinance amending Chapter 12.32 of the Casper Municipal Code regarding trees and shrubs.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Mr. City Manager, did you want to say anything about this before we head into our discussion?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you. This is the opportunity that council has to consider the request made by some of our commercial neighbors in town as it relates to the arborist business locally, the arborist industry locally. As the speaker previously said, part of the inspiration was with regard to unlicensed arborists, if you will, or contractors in this business that perform tree trimming operations or tree felling operations. The proposed ordinance that you have in front of you suggests a number of things, one of which would be that with regard to aerial operations or felling operations, that a licensed arborist be on site throughout that type of an operation. For some of the other more, I should say, less demanding operations, this ordinance does not anticipate that an arborist or a licensed arborist would need to be on site. However, the ordinance does anticipate or suggest that licensing requirements, certification requirements be more specific, as well as with regard to insurance requirements as well. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, that would conclude my comments.
And it is still perfectly legal for someone to trim trees on their own property?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. Now, the council will now listen to public comment. And again, public comments are limited to 5 minutes. Is anyone here to speak on this matter this evening? Mr. Steensland.
Steensland, 533 South Washington. I've talked to the city a little bit about how maybe not just this ordinance, but how this would affect, I call it the berm, which is owned by the city, and the property owner, adjacent property owner is responsible for keeping it picked up, clean. Does that transpose on the keeping the trees trimmed or cut down? There's a lot of berms in town with a lot of dead trees.
Are you talking about the area of sidewalk, of grass between the sidewalk and the street?
Correct.
Okay.
That is city property, is my understanding.
It belongs to us, but it is the responsibility of the property owner, is it not, Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, that is correct, and this ordinance would not impact that relationship.
So whose responsibility are those trees?
Mr. Mayor, it would be the adjacent property owner's responsibility. And in some cases, the city would be involved, but that would be in specific cases that may or may not relate to what Mr. Steensland's referring to.
And my point is, if you got 2 or 3 totally dead trees on your property, it's a pretty expensive proposition to get them taken down by an arborist. I know of 2 or 3 properties that I've commented to the city about code enforcement to see what could be done, like a yard that's overgrown with weeds. I know we have a way of dealing with that, but it's a different ballgame with a tree that costs probably anywhere from $800 to a couple $1,000 to to take down. I feel like the city owns some responsibility in taking care of them when they're totally dead. You can look at some trees on First and Elk Street. They parallel First Street. There's two totally dead, one with one or two branches still alive. But that's just one example. There's so many examples around town that the individual person couldn't take care of them. I don't want to see the city have to take that on because of the expense, but I think there needs to be something done as far as them being a safety hazard.
In our discussion period, I'll ask Mr. Henley what our options might be there. Okay.
Okay. Where do I get a copy of the ordinance? Is it public knowledge? I'm sure it is.
It's in the packet.
It's in your packet.
Oh, the public packet.
Well, this one right here? Okay. So I can take this when I leave?
Well, it's in the packet that's on the city website where we always have our packets. So, and if you need a hard copy, we can get that for you.
Yeah. I'm not a website type of guy. I think you all know that by now. So I'm a hard paper type of guy. That's the only way I can review it and grasp it. So that's fine.
We'll get you a copy if you come to the manager's office.
Okay, I'll look forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello.
Could we get your name and address for the record, please?
Ryan Winger, 2925 CY Avenue.
Okay.
So 3 years ago, I brought up the licensing to the city. We talked about it. There was big issues. Lots of people out there without a license, and nothing could really be done to it about it. At the time, I had 8 arborists licensed through the city of Casper, and then the next year goes by, nothing. It got brought up, but people thought that there were going to be stipulations on pruning your own trees, and so it got shut down. And then somebody died, and now it's getting brought up again. And our industry kills lots of people every single year. Lots of people get injured through our industry. All we're asking is that it's a little bit regulated. I mean, it's bare minimum, somebody with 3 years experience being on your property. In a tree, it takes a few years to get to know how to move around in a tree. I mean, it takes time. So somebody being, I mean, that's just a bare minimum of 3 years. That's a starting point. So that's all we're asking to have a license is a starting point. You're kind of still a beginner. I consider myself still a beginner. So.
Okay, you're in favor of what we're doing then?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Winger? Okay, thank you, sir.
Did you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'll do this.
It's my bad eye on the left side. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. Donna Hoffman with the University of Wyoming Extension at 2011 Fairgrounds Road. The current ordinance, from my understanding and history of being at the office for the past 17 years and training, initially applying arborists through the test that we offer at the Extension office, the ordinance that's on the books has been on the books since 1997, and it's about time that we look at that ordinance and get it up to date. There are many professions that the city has regulations on what those professionals can or can't do with a license. Every profession that is regulated has the chance of hurting someone else along with the potential for hurting themselves, but arborists working on someone's private property, as we heard from the family that spoke earlier today, has a pretty high risk of potential damage to either private property, in the instances of trees that are in the boulevard area, as spelled out in ordinance. Adjacent to streets, there's a chance for trees to damage public property as well as private property. The licensing process is not that strenuous, and receiving the ISA certification after 3 years working in the industry so that you have enough background in it to actually be a good quality certified arborist is not undue in receiving training. Many of our professionals go through apprentice process, a journeyman, and then a master process before they're in charge of projects based on their business industry. And I really think that because many of the arborists in town have come together and discussed with staff how this is going to go and really see that there is a need for it, the professionals themselves are in support of it, and it really is to the benefit of the citizens of the community to have licensed and later on certified arborists, and that we prevent the chuck with a truck and a chainsaw from doing the work in the community, so that we don't have liability issues. If somebody cuts a tree and it falls through someone's roof, they pack up their tools and drive away and say, I got to go get some more tools, I'll be right back, and then disappear. Or in a situation where inexperienced arborists fell a tree with private individuals so close to the work site that someone gets killed again. I think that it's really imperative that we move forward, and the wait since 1997 has been long enough. It's about time we update that test, and it's time to require more of people from a profession that can potentially do a lot of damage. But they have been, over the last several decades, doing much better work in the community and improving things in the community. And that high quality of work is going to just continue to improve property values. As you mentioned earlier, the city does run on tax base, and those property values are part of that. So having good qualified workers doing that work and improving property values throughout the community is a good thing as well.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Hoffman?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
My name's Adam Walsh. I live at 2947 Saratoga Road. I just wanted to state that as one of the smaller companies, I know there's a worry about the smaller companies being squeezed out by the larger companies due to these certification expenses. I can guarantee that that shouldn't be an issue, for the fact that I did it before it's even an issue. You know, I started small, stayed small. I can still afford these things. I do think that this is a very serious issue that needs to be dealt with, just like your electricians or anything else around that, you know, we need to regulate to make sure that we can help keep people safe. I don't think we need to do anything too drastic, just something that at least a foot in the door to continue to get better. So that way we don't have to worry about someone passing away yet again. We don't want one death to not be enough, and then have another one come about, and another one, and another one, until we finally get with it. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in as one of the smaller guys who've been in the industry a long time. We're dealing with thousands of pounds of stuff up in the air. So it can cause a lot of damage and a lot of pain, and possibly fatality. So just wanted to kind of get my 2 cents.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Walsh? Councilwoman Lutz.
And I guess we could also have the gentleman from All Trees, is that right, answer the question as well. So we had previously discussed when we brought this up that in the situation of electricians, when you have a master electrician, his license basically covers the journeyman underneath him, and he doesn't necessarily have to be on site when that electrical work is being performed, yet he's still responsible because it's still his license. If I could just get a response from the two of you of how you feel on, does the individual holding the ISA certification need to be on site when there's a tree fell? Or does he just need to be in communication with that staff about what they should be doing and what's the right way to do it and so on and so forth?
I think with that answer, it would be that you would want somebody, not even just necessarily ISA certified, but at least if we could renew the licensing testing, so that way it's more intricate, so that way you know you're doing your stuff right. Because like with him, you can go off of plans, you can go off of blueprints, you can figure that stuff out. When they're on site and you've got different variables coming and going, people walking underneath, whatnot, you don't have conduits going through, following framing. This is a completely, it's kind of, no matter how much you plan a tree removal, there's going to be things that change in the middle of the process, so.
Okay, well, that's good feedback.
I don't know if Ryan wants to chip his 2 cents in.
Please.
So a master electrician has approximately, I don't know how long, but like 10 to 20 years in the field. An ISA certified arborist has to have 3 years. So that's pretty big difference. Bill Scott would be the board certified master arborist, and I wouldn't see him happen to be on the field, but beginner ISA certification, I would definitely say yes. And yeah.
And that is the way we currently have it worded in the ordinance. It says, an ISA certified arborist must be on location at the job site at all times during an aerial operation. Yep. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were all in agreement and felt good about that.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman
I'd like to ask these guys a couple of questions. You know, kind of following along the electrician plumber analogy. Everything that an electrician or a plumber or that those guys do is subject to inspection and everything. You know, the inspector comes and says, yeah, okay, that all looks okay. It kind of seems to me that that's a little bit different than the dynamics of that you're sitting there and you're taking a tree down, or you're conducting some aerial operation like that is inherently dangerous right while you're doing it, as opposed to something that's going to be inspected before it's ultimately put in service. I'm concerned about that, and I would invite you guys to comment on that. I also would like to have you comment on the idea that, like with electricians or plumbers, you got your master electrician, and then you got your journeyman, and then you've got your apprentice. Is there any such designations in the tree world? It's kind of a two-part question, and I do that purposely to confuse you.
With the first one, like you were saying, they are totally different dynamics. That's actually another reason why, rather than a phone call, you'd have someone on site, because you can't just go back and inspect and make sure that that phone call went the way they thought it did to get the plumbing or electrical work done. So that's why having somebody who has the competency to perform the task should be on site. And that's where we're hoping to get around that aspect. As for
well, and could I butt in there? Are you saying that a certified arborist should be there, or during those kind of operations?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I would agree.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding.
Certified, or like I said, because of the issue of small business being thrown in there, I don't think it's an issue, but people do. If we want it to bring it down to just a city license, I think we've really got to up the competency test to get a license. Not necessarily the more money, but you got to know what you're doing.
I would say with the apprenticeship would be like anybody starting out, and then a journeyman would be like an ISA certified arborist, and then the master is something we're all hoping to get one day, but ISA certified, I mean, it's...
Well, then, like those steps, sorry, I don't mean to
interrupt.
Go ahead. I came from working with Rocky Mountain Power for high voltage clearance with trees, and they have a setup. I mean, we could even mimic something very similar to that. You have your person on the ground, that's their title. You have the trimmer, that's their title. And then we could just step that up to training, licensing. You got to do continued education, just like we do with our certification. I mean, if we had to set it up, we can set it up. It really wouldn't take much time.
Have you guys had the opportunity to actually read line by line the proposed ordinance that we're looking at?
I haven't had the chance, not the latest version.
Well, I'd really ask you to please do that, because I for one would be anxious to hear, you know, if you think that this adequately addresses things, if it inadequately addresses them, if it over addresses them, or, you know, because, you know, whatever the council ultimately enacts, it's, you know, it's going to be an ordinance, and we want to get it right. You know, there's no saying in the law that bad cases make bad laws. Well, you know, none of us want to make a bad law here. We want to make a good law. And,
So we'll have 2 more readings, and so there will be public comment at both of the next readings, and sometimes we'll hear public comment where we'll go back into a work session and change something in the ordinance. So we rely on people with the expertise sometimes to give us the feedback we need, because I don't know anything about trimming trees. Other than stay away from it.
Not many people will actually do. They don't realize the biology and what all goes into the process of.
Okay. Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cappy.
Thank you. Question for you. When you worked for the power company, did you do safety meetings before you did your aerial operations?
Yes.
Did you have a plan that you had gone through the hazards and what might happen, what could go wrong, what your contingencies were?
Yes, every job site should have a pre-job survey filled out.
Do you, all of you arborists, do that on every job with the landowner, with the homeowner, and tell them you have to stay back, you have to do, and go through that whole contingency plan?
I don't go through the whole pre-job survey with the homeowner, but I do make sure that they're understood that they are to be indoors or away from our work site. If they need to come within our work site, or I even tell them, if you need to open the door, go to your car or something, open your door, get someone's attention on the ground, and then we can stop the process so you have a safe transition through the work zone.
And how do you think this ordinance would have prevented the accident that happened?
To be honest, I think it would just be making it more aware for other people. I mean, this ordinance doesn't change that as much as the ordinance for electricians changes someone coming and doing shoddy electrical work.
Well, that's kind of what I was interested in, is that basically people have to understand to ask the questions if you even have a license, if you even have insurance, if any of these procedures are being followed. And that was really what I was getting at with my questions is, I'm not sure that this ordinance will change anything if the questions by the homeowner are not asked.
And that could be said for just about any trade.
Okay, we're probably going to have to move forward, folks.
Just a
Councilman Lutz.
really quick follow-up on that, just so everyone here and everyone watching knows. We did discuss that once this was through and that individuals were getting licensed, that we would have an accessible part of the city's website where you could look up if somebody was licensed or not. So if an arborist approached you and said, hey, I'd like to trim some trees for you, you could go back inside and go to the City of Casper's website and see if that individual was licensed and had the required insurance.
I believe they have it set up already, don't they?
I'm not sure.
The City of Casper, I thought they had a list of certified.
It might not be online. They might have it.
It's not on.
Okay. I'm sure they do have it available, though, at the city level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
One thing I'd like to add
Okay.
is if we've seen somebody up in a tree, you can tell, like an experienced guy can see that the person up in the tree is not experienced just by the way they are, the way they're holding on. So being said, we could at least tell somebody and they could come out and remove them or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Sadly, we can self-police all we want,
Yeah.
but unless we have somebody to help back us up to keep these people out of the trees, there's nothing we can do.
Okay, thank you. I think you had 2 minutes left, so I'm going to allow it. We normally don't have people come to the podium twice, Ms. Hoffman, but.
I just have a couple of comments that relate to other questions. So the ISA has a couple of levels of certification. There's the ISA Certified Arborist. They do offer that test in Spanish. There is ISA Certified Arborist Utility Specialist, which is what Adam did before he opened his own business. There is the ISA Certified Arborist Municipal Specialist, usually city workers or municipality workers. Certified Tree Worker Climber Specialist. Tree Worker Climber Specialist offered testing in Spanish. And then the Tree Worker Aerial Lift Specialist, so climbing in the tree is different than working on a lift. That test is again offered in Spanish. And then we have one certified master arborist in the state of Wyoming who is in the room as well. So it does have levels of testing. There was another point I was going to make and I lost it. I do think that the arborists are doing a pretty good job of self-policing and talking to each other when we have somebody working that's not working under the current system. But until there is some teeth in the law that's on the books, it really is on the books to no avail, and there's nothing that can be done for somebody that's working outside of the ordinance that's already on the books.
And would I be correct, Ms. Hoffman, in thinking that there probably are municipalities that use all of those certification levels? And okay, so what we're doing is kind of minimalist, really.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else to speak on this matter? Good evening.
Hi. My name is Gabriel Green. I live at 5041 Pay It Forward Drive. Honestly, this seems like a really good idea, kind of straightforward. Yeah, you don't get to cut down thousands of pounds of wood and drop it on the ground without some type of licensing. I'm in favor of all of those requirements. This question is kind of directed to Adam, but Mr. Mayor, if you or one of the council members would like to ask Adam this question on my behalf, I know I'm supposed to just address you and not get personal or anything. This is straight out of Oil City News. I didn't read the actual ordinance, but they say that commercial liability insurance would go up to $1 million instead of the current $100,000 minimum, and that aggregate insurance coverage would go up to $2 million instead of the current $300,000 minimum. I don't know anything about this industry. I don't know if that's reasonable. I just wanted to voice a little concern when I read through it really quickly that might be that's a pretty stiff hike in what their minimum is required. So possibly to Mr. Adam or to any other smaller arborist, I just want to make sure before we put it on the books that this isn't going to segment off this type of industry to only the people who have enough capital to afford what would be otherwise be an insane, overly high, whatever you want to call it, insurance premium. I just wanted to make sure those numbers were reasonable. So if you all want to look into that, maybe amend the numbers if they aren't, whatever. Otherwise, as a citizen, fully in favor of safer tree removal.
Questions for Mr. Green? Okay, thank you. Well, since we are going to have two more, I'm sorry, Mr. Cathy.
What we looked at, and we actually talked about the insurance, but basically if you're out there cutting down a tree, look at the price of a house. You need to have insurance to be able to cover that.
Absolutely.
That's why those limits are where they are.
What then is the average property price in Casper right now?
It depends on how much you damage one. But you fell a tree and hit a gas line, and you burned the house down, and it's worth $350,000. You better have some insurance.
Wouldn't be $1 million or $2 million. I'm not trying to argue that these are outrageous. I don't know anything about
I am a small business owner, and they aren't that out of line.
What I think we'll do, sir, is we'll on second and third reading, these individuals will have a chance to look at the ordinance in some detail, and if that's a problem area, they'll bring it to our attention.
Perfect.
Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And we can address it in our discussion as well. Anyone else to speak on this matter? Okay, discussion amongst council. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Just a couple of things. As Councilman Cathy mentioned before, again, it is up to the homeowner to do their due diligence to make sure that they are hiring not only a legit business, but somebody that is a licensed arborist. You can still do work legally without a licensed arborist by doing it yourself, having your friends and family come to your house. And this is only a misdemeanor ordinance, and really the only time it'll be prosecuted is if something bad happens. And the maximum penalty is 6 months in jail and a $750 fine. So, I mean, really, is that going to make you feel good if your house is destroyed and your family member is injured?
I mean, it really, to me, this ordinance doesn't really do anything. It doesn't do anything. Because you have to make sure that you are doing your due diligence. The city's not going to go around to everybody that's in the tree to make sure that they're licensed, to make sure they're insured. This is, again, up to the homeowner. And it is not the same as an electrician or a contractor because there are no code inspection requirements. So I'm going to vote against this ordinance because I really believe that it isn't going to stop an incident like that. It won't stop it from happening again. The same thing could happen easily. Because if I don't want to pay for a licensed arborist to come to my house or to pay for a legitimate tree removal company to come to my house, then I can do it myself. Or I can hire friends and family to do it, and the same exact thing will happen again, or could happen again. So I just think that this is mostly just a feel-good thing that really has no teeth to it.
Councilman Cathy.
The one thing that I have concerns about is this ordinance says any aerial operation. And I have about a 20 to 25 foot evergreen that I get trimmed every year. And they take off basically the new budding, the new growth every year. That is an aerial operation. I don't need an arborist to come out there and have to pay the extra money for that. He can send his guy with the bucket truck and his trimmer out there and in about an hour take care of it. And the arborist could be out bidding somebody else or taking down a tree or doing whatever. But those types of small operations are doing nothing either but driving up the cost for the homeowner that needs a small trimming job. Now, my big cottonwood in the backyard that's the tallest tree in the neighborhood, yeah, that takes some experience to come out and do because the tree does have to be climbed. Things do have to take place. But to me, those are two distinctly different types of operations as well. The one should, it's definitely a living tree. Part of what we're talking about here too are dead trees, and that dead tree doesn't really care about the cell structure and how it transmits its nutrients up because that's water under the bridge, so to speak. So I have concerns about the ordinance as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Henley, regarding the trees on private property in front of people's homes between the sidewalk, and we had a discussion about this. I don't know if you were involved in this. But would the city be able to pay a private property owner to take care of a tree that they were responsible for because they weren't able to take care of that cost themselves?
Typically, it would not be the case since our Constitution prohibits the donation of any type of money or the like to an individual for anything other than necessary needs of the poor. So that is just as a matter of donation, likely not. If we had some responsibility for it, certainly yes. So there are some occasions where I think we've had some responsibility for trees and we've accepted that responsibility and we've paid to have them trimmed or taken down. But as far as making a specific donation to a particular property owner, probably constitutionally prohibited. And I know that Mr. Steensland, I think is what you're referencing, his comments, he was concerned about the property owner not, being able to afford that, but at the same time, not wanting the city to undertake all of this and then ending up footing the bill for all of these property owners that have trees that need trimmed or removal. So it's a tough question. And I'd be happy to take a look at that and see if there are any great solutions. I can't think of any offhand.
But there's this section 1232.060, care of public trees, city authority. The city shall have the right to plant, trim, spray, preserve, and remove trees, plants, and shrubs within the lines of all streets, alleys, avenues, lanes, squares, and public grounds, as may be necessary. But that would not include that strip of land between the sidewalk and the street. Is that correct?
You know, Mayor, I think we've had programs where where the city has actually put in certain trees or the like in the past and have agreed with the property owner and then that they would be responsible for it. Those were special programs, I think, that may have happened back in, I'm not sure which city manager had those. But I know that in the past we've had programs like that where we felt that there were trees needed and they were replacement trees due to some type of, I don't know if it was an infestation or just a bad winter where you had some real damage and we were wanting to get trees back into the cityscape.
Okay. But the areas that Mr. Steensland was talking about wouldn't come under that definition of public trees.
No, typically not. Yeah, okay. These would be.
Okay. I remember that being the dilemma right after the Snowmageddon, I think former Mayor Sandoval referred to it as. And I think he also gave us the term zombie trees, if I remember correctly. So, Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know the city does have a program that you have to go trim your trees if they're, I forget what the rules are, something on the order of 8 or 10 feet of clearance on a sidewalk. And I think it's 10 or 12 feet over a street. And it's pretty routine to send reminders to people that this needs to be done if the trees are in the boulevard. So
comes with the property ownership. Councilman Bates.
I know I've requested some trees around the city to be cut or branches removed for vehicles to see. When the city does it, I'm assuming, if you don't mind me, Mayor, ask the city manager, I'm assuming that we don't hire that out, or the city has its own crew that does it, or do we have a licensed arborist that would go from here on out, if we pass this, that would go to every tree that needs to be trimmed to go take care of that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Bates, we do have licensed arborists on our staff, and they do go out on a very regular basis at the right time of year to do trimming of the city's urban forest, but not privately held portions of that urban forest.
But won't they also go out to give advice to a private owner as to the condition of their tree upon request? I thought we were doing that.
Mr. Mayor, we typically do that through the partnership that we have with the University of Wyoming Extension. But generally speaking, as arborists, we do get questions from time to time, and we do give responses and that sort of thing. You bet.
Councilman Lutz.
So my question is actually for Sean, because I absolutely agree. I think this ordinance is great, and I think all the things that we are requiring have purpose, but I also agree that this is kind of along the shoot of, we're not punishing anybody, but punishing the people following the rules, while the people who aren't following the rules are just going to continue not following the rules. So I guess my question is, do you think increasing the teeth, like making the penalties more severe, is the answer, or?
You can't really make the penalties severe. The city can only pass misdemeanor ordinance.
Okay.
So the most that a city
we're
can
maxing
impose is 6 months in jail and a $750
Okay, so we are at the max.
We are. And,
Okay.
and even then, it's up to 6 months in jail and up to a $750 fine. So you could get probation. So, I mean, if I masquerade myself as a professional tree trimmer and go in and cut your tree down and destroy your house, and I'm prosecuted under this ordinance, you're still not going to be covered by insurance, under me anyway, and I'll be in jail for 6 months and be let out. Now, you could sue me civilly, but even then, I mean, if I don't have anything, then you're not going to get much out of me. So I just don't think that this is going to be the deterrent that we think it's going to be.
What is, and I'm not just directing this question to you and like being defensive, because I'm truly questioning it, because I agree with your logic. What is? I mean, how do we fix this problem so that this doesn't happen again?
I guess it would depend on the situation. I mean, if somebody's under the influence of drugs or alcohol, you could, maybe make a case for charging somebody with involuntary manslaughter or something like that. But again, that's not anything that the city can do. That's a state legislature level issue.
Yep. Okay.
Councilman Huber.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to try to address some of Vice Mayor Johnson's concerns and Councilman Lutz's concerns. You know, we can't legislate and tell people you have to be good and you have to be responsible and you have to do the right thing. That, you know, that doesn't work. And it'd be real nice if we could just pass a law that says everybody's got to do the right thing, and then we could all go home. But the world doesn't work that way. But I do think that, and I support this this ordinance, in spite of the fact that I certainly recognize Vice Mayor Johnson's concerns that it's not going to automatically make the whole world better and safer. But I do think that this kind of legislation has a positive influence and a positive effect in that if it can raise the awareness and just the awareness of these kind of issues, and you know, maybe it'll prompt somebody that would not otherwise have thought about asking, are you licensed, are you insured? Might otherwise not have thought to say, is it safe for me to stand right here and watch you do that? You know, sometimes legislation has that kind of that moral suasion effect. And it's for that reason that I'm in favor of this.
Councilman Pacheco.
Yeah, I think Councilman Huber and I are on the same page. I'm supporting this ordinance. When industry professionals come up and say they're supporting this, I think when we up here as legislators have no idea about that, certainly helps me to make decisions on on your expertise. If you want to come and talk to me about working with youth, I'll be the expert on that, but not on cutting trees. So I think that that's very telling for us. And I agree to some extent on some of the issues that Vice Mayor Johnson's brought up. But part of it is that we have to also understand that we play a role in trying to protect our community in doing that. Could this have saved your father? I don't know. I would have liked to think so. But I think that we can make an attempt to do this. This is our first reading. We've had multiple discussion. Well, we had a discussion in our work session, which I wish we would have had some of these issues dealt with at our work session, and these concerns dealt with. But in our first reading, if people have continued issues in our second and third reading, we can make amendments to make it stronger to do what we need to be able to do. It makes sense. It's common sense for us to do that, and I support you guys. And my heart understands exactly what you guys have gone through. So thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Just one more thing. I mean, I do support people being licensed in this profession. I do support insurance requirements and having a legitimate business. And if I was a business owner in this industry, I would do those same things. And I think these people would do those same things regardless of whether or not we have an ordinance or not. I just don't think that this is going to be effective.
Councilman Friel.
Now, the only thing I want to add to that is that it's kind of like, I'm sure if you go into the electrical field or you can go in the plumbing field, you're always going to have fly-by-night people that are going to be out there doing electrical work without a license, plumbing without a license. So I support this. I don't think, you know, again, this ordinance probably would not have changed the outcome for your family. But at least it puts it out there, and it's an ordinance that would follow right in line with having, you know, for the people that do the right thing. And I appreciate the fact that there's so much work that's been put into it by the industry itself, and I'm 100% behind this. $750 fine and 6 months in jail doesn't bring back a life, and never will. But this is the right thing to do, and you're always going to have those people that are always going to try and take the cheaper, easy way out, and you know, there'll be other ways to deal with them later on, I guess.
Well, I'm going to support it as well. I think it's widely known that you can't pass yourself off as an electrician and do electrical work for pay without being properly licensed. Does that keep everyone from doing that? No. But the vast majority of people say, well, you really need to be licensed to do that, and so they don't. And so I think there is an education component, and who knows? I believe that there will be some people at least who will say, oh wait, you're supposed to have a license, better not. And that could save a life by itself. So it may not have a lot of teeth, but it's a whole lot better than nothing, which is what we've had. So any further discussion? Do we have amendments? I think Councilman Cathy, you had amendment, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I would like to make the following amendment. The current amendment reads, the following provision applies to license operations. An ISA certified arborist must be on location at the job site at all times during aerial operations. The amendment I move to add after the phrase aerial operation is the following. A licensed demolition contractor engaged in a demolition operation on a property that is unoccupied is not required to retain or have on site an arborist. Thus, the amendment would read, an ISA certified arborist must be on location at the job site at all times during an aerial operation. A licensed demolition contractor engaged in a demolition operation on a property that is unoccupied is not required to retain or have on site an arborist.
Okay. Second?
I'll second that.
Discussion on the amendment. Mr. Vice Mayor?
No, I was pointing at.
Oh, sorry. Councilwoman Lutz, didn't see you.
In your corner. I guess my point to that is just because the home that's being demolished is unoccupied, what about the surrounding properties? I guess to me, like, unless I understand that in our minds, when we're thinking of demolition, we're thinking of this open field and this old house that's just being knocked down by like backhoes, but that might not be the case. It might be it might be demolishing a house that has a neighbor behind it, left to it and right to it. So I guess to me, it's just, there's still a lot that could happen.
Councilman Friel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other thing, I think it was a comment that was made out here earlier. It seems to me that whether it's a living tree or a dead tree, anything could happen to it when you fell a tree. And it could go any direction. It's not a guaranteed. And so to not have an arborist out there just because you're taking down a dead tree or you have a demo expert out there, it's a tree. And it still needs to have an arborist there, in my mind's eye, when it's being felled.
Other comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Huber.
I'm in favor of the general purpose of Councilman Cathy's proposed amendment, because if what you've got is just a general demolition going on, and they're in there with a D4 or, a big piece of equipment taking everything down, that's a whole lot different than, an arborist in there cutting a tree down next to somebody's house or something like that. I don't know how the best way is to word something like that. As Councilman Cathy was reading that, I wondered if it'd be a little bit more word economical to say, except a licensed demolition contractor would not be required to have this. And I would kind of offer that as a friendly amendment. I know that parliamentarians hate that term, but I have some of the same concerns that I'm hearing others say. But as a general concept, I think it's a real good idea that if you got a licensed demolition contractor in there doing a demolition, which I presume has been permitted and all that kind of thing, it seems to me to be totally different from usual arboreal work.
I don't know anything about what a demolition license includes. I assume there's a number of safety precautions they have to follow to maintain a license and keep people safe in the surrounding areas, but I don't know anything about a demolition license. Do you know anything about that, Councilman?
I don't know about the demolition license specifically. I know that the city even contracts with demolition contractors to remove properties. Ms. Becker may know a little bit more about their exact requirements, but I do know they are licensed. They do have insurance, and The other point I was going to bring up as well, which Councilman Huber brought up, is these guys aren't out there with a chainsaw and a bucket truck. They're out there with either a big track hoe, a dozer, things like this, that they have a hold of these things, and they're dealing with a lot bigger equipment than most of the arborists have, and they're out there to demolish. And they could stand just as good a chance, depending on the size of the building being on the neighbor as a tree. So from that standpoint, with regard to the language, Mr. Henley, how did you feel about the language? Because you kind of helped with this language, so.
Mr. Henley?
You know, in listening to Councilman Huber, I understand it is, I think, more brief. Basically, as I understood what Councilman Huber said, that you need to have an arborist on site at all times during an aerial operation, except a licensed demolition contractor would not be required to have an arborist on site. Was that it? And that well may be fine. I think probably the language that you had offered, Councilman Cathy, just kind of was making people feel comfortable that the property would be unoccupied. But other than that, I think that's fair.
I think the unoccupied needs to be in there, and that's actually what one of the demolition contractors even said, because they've been asked to come in and take down trees, and they have declined. They were only interested, well, like what happened along 2nd Street for the state office property. They just, and so that's what they're more interested in.
And your amendment is basically to make it so that they can do that work without having to call an arborist in if they run into a tree
Schedule them in,
out in the middle of nowhere.
Whatever, yes, exactly.
Councilman Pacheco.
Thank you. I won't support this amendment just because I think I agree with Councilman Lutz that we are looking at there's neighbors around, still people that are around. I think that it would still be advantageous to have an arborist there to see that, and so I won't be supporting it.
Okay. I think I'm going to vote for it because I think there's just as much danger knocking down a house as there is now knocking down a tree, and so I assume that there's a number of protections in place, or that person wouldn't have a license to do that demolition work. So, is there any other discussion? On this amendment only, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilman Huber, Powell, Cathy, and Hopkins voting aye, the motion fails.
Okay. Now back to the original ordinance. Councilman Cathy?
I have another amendment. Sorry.
Oh, excuse me.
This one was to clear up some language in there. Has to deal with the section on licensed arborists. Currently says successfully complete yearly with a satisfactory score, a competency test administered by the Wyoming Extension Office within 3 years of obtaining a commercial arborist license from the city. Each commercial arborist shall also secure certification from the International Society of Arboriculture as an ISA certified arborist. Proof of such certification shall be filed with the city clerk's office. And our city attorney was wanting to remove the word also from line 14 of that page to where it would read successfully complete yearly satisfaction score competency test within 3 years. Each commercial arborist secures certification from International Society of Agricultural. Proof of such certification shall be filed with the city. Securing certification from the ISA replaces the requirement for a yearly competency test administered by the Wyoming Extension Office. Thank
you.
You're welcome.
So you're adding a section?
Taking out a word.
Okay.
Which word? It says also, but basically what you're doing is if you're ISA certified, you don't have to take the yearly Wyoming Extension Office competency test.
Okay.
That's the summary of it.
Okay.
Sorry it was so long.
All right, and that's clear to you, Mr. Henley, what?
Second.
What council, and we have a second from Vice Mayor Johnson. Discussion on this amendment. Okay. Please cast your vote on this amendment. Good catch, Mr. Councilman Kathy. Oops, I thought I had it. There we go.
With all members
Please record the vote.
voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Back now. Any other amendments? Back to the original ordinance. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
Councilman Johnson, Bates, and Kathy voting nay, the motion passes.
Thank you. Council will now discuss the ordinance amending the municipal code to establish a code of ethics. This item will be open for public comment and for discussion by council. Please read the ordinance on first reading by title only.
An ordinance amending the Casper Municipal Code to establish a code of ethics.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Kathy, seconded by Councilman Pacheco. Mr. City Manager, would you like to say anything about this ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, some of the key provisions that are available in this particular set of code.
Could you please take your discussion outside, please? Thank you. Okay. Let's start over. Okay.
Worked well. The couple key provisions that I would recommend council remember as a part of your deliberation with regard to this set of proposed ordinances is with regard to the clarity as it relates to the definition of nepotism. The clarity brought forward with regard to the definitions of family and family members, and of course a discussion pertaining to conflict and conflicts of interest that this revised code of ethics suggests for not only elected officials but public officials more broadly. And with that, Mr. Mayor, we would ask for council's favorable consideration.
Discussion. No discussion. All the discussion took place in the work session, apparently. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 15A1, establishing the social media policy guidelines for city council members. Item 15A2, authorizing change order number 2 with JTL Group Incorporated doing business as Knife River for a price increase and time extension for the 2019 residential street improvements project. Item 15A3, authorizing an agreement with Hilltop National Bank for leasing rooftop space for placement of the mobile data communication antenna and related equipment. Item 15A4, authorizing a contract with the Casper Natrona County Health Department. Item 15A5, authorizing an amendment to the contract for professional services between the City of Casper and Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates Incorporated. Item 15A6, repealing resolution number 00-120 and adopting this resolution establishing provisions and procedures for accepting donations, memorials, and sponsorship contributions.
Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Friel. Mr. City Manager, would you like to comment on any of these matters?
Mr. Mayor, only to say thank you, by the way, that the long-range transportation plan is one of those plans that involved a lot of public feedback and consideration, so I appreciate the role that all of you had in that process as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the consent minute action titles.
Item 16A1, authorizing the reappointment of Kevin Hawley to the Casper Natrona County Travel and Tourism Board. Item 16A2, authorizing the appointment of Councilman Steve Cathy to the Casper Area Chamber of Commerce Board and Councilman Steve Friel as an alternate.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda items just read.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Johnson, seconded by Councilman Bates. Any abstentions or nay votes?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to abstain from 16A2.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'll also do the same.
Okay, thank you. Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With Councilman Friel and Kathy abstaining from item 16A2, motion passes.
This time we ask council members to bring forth concerns or items of interest. How will we start on the left side tonight? Councilman Hopkins.
Well, have a good night. Thank you.
Councilman Kathy.
I think I've said enough tonight.
Councilwoman Lutz.
Nothing tonight.
Councilman Bates.
Councilman Kathy and I attended the Breaking the Silence Festival of Hope, and we got Steve Kathy read a proclamation, and I gotta say a few words. It was a neat festival. Biggest thing that I took away from it, listening to other proclamations, was that there's hope for anyone and everyone. And something I pointed out that we all struggle. We've struggled with finances, relationships, anything in our lives. We've all had struggles, and we have all people have overcome it. And with our own struggles, we can reach out and show people that we're not perfect. We're all humans. And if we can make it, they can make it as well. So the hope was really great to hear regarding it. So I just thank Jenny Hunter for putting that on. So.
Okay, anything
That's
else? Okay. Councilman Pacheco.
Thank you. Just one item that I just wanted to bring up, and this isn't by any means shot at Councilman Kathy, who I really like a lot. In the future, if we could try to do our amendments maybe written beforehand, only because I see things, and I know we've done it before, and I know Councilman Huber's done it, and I know Councilman Hopkins has done it. And if that's something that we could possibly think about doing, I know it would also be advantageous to our attorney, who goes by this, kind of flies by his seat of his pants. I also know in times, though, that our amendments at the last minute can come up, but when it's possible, I would like if we could try to have amendments written beforehand and give them to us so we could review them. I want to be able to make it the best possible decision I can on amendments, to be able to do that. And so just something food for thought for all of us, including myself, to be thoughtful on those types of things. So thank you.
Councilman Huber.
Nothing tonight.
Councilman Friel.
Nothing.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Today is Constitution Day. On this day in 1787, the delegates signed the Constitution. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. I have a few things to mention. I attended the CASA fundraiser, and the CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, and this is a group of volunteers that advocate for kids who are abuse victims in our community, and they are the ones to make sure that they get all the services they need, and their work is often unrecognized and something that kind of flies under the radar screen, but is critical for a lot of very needy kids in our community. Also had the opportunity to be present at the, let's see, which one do I want to do next? The Department of Health 65th anniversary celebration. And the Department of Health is another agency that helps many needy people in our community, people who wouldn't have health services if the health department weren't there. And they work on disease prevention, they work on public safety, as far as food safety. They work on, they provide services to pregnant young women who need support, and they just do a lot of very good work in our community that again goes under the radar screen. Also had an opportunity to meet with the airport operators, and this is a group that's working to improve our air service in the state, which we all know is a critical component to economic development. And this is a group that's trying to be cooperative with each other, even though they are in a competitive environment. But the more functional our air service system is, the more we'll be able to attract businesses to this community that need those services, and also just make sure that people will want to live in communities where they can travel more easily. Also had an opportunity to dedicate a mural at Riverfront Park, which was a time to recognize the Serve Wyoming volunteers, the Senior Corps, and people who again are out there volunteering their time in service to the community with very little expectation that they'll be recognized or rewarded. If you ever have a chance to get down there to Riverview Park, these murals are very cool, and they basically painted a mural that was probably, 20 by 50 feet, and did that last Friday. And also attended the Localicious fundraiser at the VR Ranch, which was a Food for Thought fundraiser. And for those of you who aren't aware of Food for Thought, they are a very active organization that is working to provide local food options in our community, and also train people in proper preparation of nutritious meals. We have a lot of people in our community that don't eat well and don't have access to good produce, and Food for Thought's working on that. And they will be they are in the vanguard of our efforts to eat locally sourced food, because as I said to the group, people talk about food insecurity, and really we all have a certain level of food insecurity because all of our food comes from other places, and things can happen in those places. And the more that we grow our own food and butcher our own animals in Wyoming, the more the more secure our own food stream will be. So these are groups that are doing great things in our community that often get unrecognized, and it was an honor to be present with them. So, and with that, a notice of the next meetings of the City Council will be a work session to be held. Oh, I guess I also wanted to mention the event tomorrow. We are having 23 veterans reinterred at the Oregon Trail Cemetery tomorrow. And this is a serious event, and it's a chance for us to honor these individuals who fought and died for us. And this is an event that I hope will be well attended. I think we'll have a couple. Vice Mayor Johnson will be there representing our council, and I hope the general public will be there in support of this. I cannot attend. We'll be going to Washington, D.C. tomorrow to advocate for Casper's needs with various agencies, along with our partners in Mills in the county, and we'll see how much headway we can make. We're trying to get Midwest Avenue done, which is a big deal for us over the long term. So the next meetings of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, September 24th, 2019 in the Council's meeting room, and a regular Council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, October 1st, 2019 in the Council chambers. A notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have a matter to discuss regarding personnel. Therefore, the Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session to reconvene this regular meeting solely for the purposes of adjournment of this regular meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Cathy.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Friel. There being a majority of members present and a motion to adjourn into executive session being moved and seconded, and that motion requiring a 2/3 majority of the council present, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
A greater than 2/3 majority of the council present voted in favor of the motion. We are hereby adjourned to an executive session.
I apologize.